Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing incredible. Um, I'm here today with Wayne Glew, and we were just having an incredible conversation before. So I'm really excited to get into this. And just as you guys are getting into this stream, I would highly love it and appreciate it if all of you guys could share this everywhere. Share this on your walls. Share this in the groups, all the groups that you're in, because I know that this is going to be a very important conversation. I know that you're going to get a lot of value, a lot of knowledge out of this, because Wayne is filled with it and there really is a lot to learn. And just before we get Wayne speaking, I wanted to say just quickly that, and I told Wayne earlier that when I started making these videos, it's probably been like 7 months now or 6 months, something like that. So not as long as Wayne, but he has played a major part of just like the whole process. Like, he was the person I was watching before I got into it. So I do need to pay my respects for that, for really just playing a huge part. And I know you guys absolutely love him as well. Like, the feedback when I put up that I was going to be going live with him, like, all you guys were very excited for it. So let's go and get straight into it, guys. And if you guys could smash the hearts as well, just to help us on the algorithm, because you know that Facebook censors us ridiculously. So we want to get this out to as many people as possible. So Wayne, thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm really excited. So how are you tonight?
I'm always well. Never good, just well.
That's good. Yeah. Also, that's well. Yeah. Nice. So I want to ask you, what are your current views on this whole coronavirus pandemic, or plandemic, will I say, and how our leaders have been treating it, and especially here in Victoria?
Well, it's the biggest load of garbage I've ever heard in my life. Coronavirus, which is what the media keep talking about, is actually a respiratory disease or virus. It's the flu. And it's amazing how this COVID-19 has come along and the flu's run away like a scaredy cat hiding around behind the cupboard. Nobody gets it. Everybody's dying, even they got a heart attack or a liver, kidney or anything else, lungs. They were all dying of COVID-19, but the media reports, 700-800 new cases of coronavirus. Why don't they just say it's a flu-like symptoms? And after we have an autopsy on the body or take samples and test it, and it comes up as the COVID-19, then say it's COVID-19. Why lie? Why mislead and deceive the people? And they are. It's fake news from fake parliaments pretending to be governments, and they're not. They're not governments. The Constitution is very clear. We have a federal parliament. We have a state parliament. They're not sovereign. They're not supreme. They can't claim they are. And I'll give you the references in the Constitution. Because page 791, the middle of the last paragraph, says neither the federal nor the state parliament are sovereign bodies. They're simply legislatures with limited authority. If they attempt to pass a law in excess of that authority, the law is a nullity and affords no obedience. Page 676, the last two lines, and the next couple of lines on the next page state, the Parliament is not supreme, and the very essence of federation is that must be so. The Parliament, like everyone else, is subject to the law and must abide by it. That's very clear. You can't change it anyway. What was set up at federation was parliaments, not governments. Why? Because the Commonwealth is a people. We are the government. We govern the parliaments through our Constitution. Now you go to page 346 and it says, amongst other things, it says not all enactments of the Parliament are valid, only those made pursuant to, in accordance with, and under the authority granted by the Constitution, and those laws only are binding on the courts, judges and the people. All other laws are void. If there still remains an authority not granted to the Parliament, it's denied and remains with the people. Why? Because the Parliament stands supreme. The states claimed, well, in Western Australia they claimed and still try to, that the states existed before federation, so did their constitutions, And the Commonwealth Constitution just came along and sat over the top of it and enhanced it. Nonsense. Lies, treason, fraud, whatever else you want to call it. Rubbish. When you look at the Constitution, when it was put together between 1890 and 1900, you go in the Hansard of the Australasian Council, which existed for the last 20-odd years before Federation. They put together a constitution for and on behalf of the people. The states, which were only colonies then, that's all they were military outposts, they were colonies, they were literally onshore jails in Australia for all the criminals out of England, basically. Now, people look at that and they say, oh yeah, but they brought all these powers transferred from the colonies into the states. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. When you look at Clause 7 of the Constitution, it states, on the proclamation of this Constitution, the old entities known as the Australasian Council and the colonies ceased to exist. And that took place on the 9th of July, 1900. So we had 5 months and 25 days, 4 months and 25 days, sorry, I was correct the first time, where we had no law except imperial law, which is your Police Act and the Magna Carta, Habeas Corpus, 1688 Bill of Rights, Act of Settlement, and the King James Bible, which is our law, all of it. And it is the Constitution of the United Kingdom. Like it or not, that's how it is. Now, if you want to know what I just said, read section 51, subsection 38 in the red annotated Constitution. It explains quite clearly. And it says in quick and Gurren, if that wasn't even so, then there were only 7 legislative areas ever exercisable by the Australasian Council and even less by the colonies. And all 7 are contained in section 51 of the Constitution. So there was no residual powers transferred over from the colonies to the new states. The new states weren't enacted until the 1st of January 1901. But Queen Victoria was well aware when Sir Edmund Barton took the draft copy of the Constitution to England that the states were flat out making all these ridiculous laws, that they called them, to circumvent our Constitution before it even started. They tried before. So Queen Victoria put in 9 clauses. Clause 5 binds all of the Commonwealth, every one of us, including the Parliament, to imperial law, subject to our Constitution. Very clear. In this state, James McGinty, he was the Attorney General, in 1996, him and the Parliament, which was the Labor Party, but it didn't matter, they were all joined in, took the state to the High Court and try and get a ruling that the states existed before Federation. And of course, the High Court said, no, that's nonsense. And if you start at, I think it's HCA 48 of 1996, and you start at paragraph 17, it explains completely the meaning of 106, which is the continuance of the state constitutions subject to the Commonwealth Constitution and altered in accordance with the constitutions. And that's a fact. That's how they go. Now, and it explains in great detail what that actually means. Then it says the states are created under 107, 108 and 109 and draw their authority referentially from that constitution. Now, referentially is subject to the Constitution continue subject to. So what that means, if there is an authority granted by the Commonwealth Constitution, doesn't matter if it existed prior to Federation, under Clause 5 of the Constitution, all the imperial laws continue subject to our Constitution. There were no laws carried over from the colonies to the states, so there was nothing to comply. Existing legislative authorities, there was only 7, are contained in section 51. I mean, there's about 40-odd sections of that. So if you read that, it'll become abundantly clear that there was nothing for local government. There was no control over your land. And I always get on the local government because that's one of the biggest bugbears of people, because they charge you to live on your own land rates. And if you don't pay it, they take it off you. I don't know about your state, but in this state now, I won in February last year in the magistrate court. He told them he couldn't give them the orders they wanted in 2 areas. And one was the land, one was in the property on the land. But they already transferred and sold it prior to the court case, knowing full well the issue of ownership was before the court. That's called treason and fraud. Now, the clown that bought it is a son of a friend of mine, and he knows full well the property is stolen. We're dealing with that, but we'll get back to him later. The issue is local government. We were asked in 1988 to add 119A to our constitution by 4 questions. The first question was, do you approve the continuance of local government? We said no. The second one was, do you approve the establishment of local government? We said no again. Now, you don't need the other 2 because the first 2 knocked it out. And they said, oh, no, that was only at federal level. No, that's a lie. That's a lie. The legislation, which has really no authority to run referendums, is irrelevant. It doesn't make it at federal or state level because the referendum is taken state by state so as not to offend legislation of the states. That's a fact. So when every state said no to the continuance, that's at state level. If you say, oh, yeah, the federal law was lawful, that may well be. The Constitution says no, because they had no authority. But let's go back to it. It's taken at state level, state by state. It has to be, because it's the majority of people in a majority of states vote for it. If they say no, no means exactly that. No to the continuance. Why have we still got it? Because we've got a bunch of traitors for so-called premiers and for the clown who thinks he's the prime minister is a primary traitor. That's all he is. Is he the head of the federal parliament? No, he's not. Is the parliament, the Australian government, the parliament? No, it's not. Is each state parliament state governments? No, they're not. Go back to page 791. Neither the federal nor the state parliament are sovereign bodies. They're simply legislated with limited authority, limited by the Constitution. So then you go back to section 61 to 68 of the Constitution. That'll explain to you that the Governor-General, who is the highest authority in government at federal level, selects 10 from the lower house, 8 from the upper. He is the executive part of the federal parliament, not federal government, federal parliament. According to 61 to 68, he selects all the portfolios and gives them to people he selects. Not the Prime Minister, not his business. There's no federal cabinet. There's no state cabinet. That's all nonsense. It's lies. It's an act of treason against the people. It's treachery to overturn our Constitution. Under the Commonwealth Criminal Code, that's imprisonment by life, for life. No exceptions. It's life. Not 10 years. It's until you kick the bucket or die, whichever way you like to put it. Now, the Parliament has the House of Representatives. They're not there to represent the political parties. They're there to represent us. The Senate is there to represent us. It's a checkpoint on the House of Representatives. Now, why have we got an opposition? Who the hell are they opposing? Us, the will of the people? If the House of Representatives is truly representing the people of the state, not in districts, and I'll come to the districts in a minute because they're boundaries, but I'll leave that alone for a second. Now, what is your Parliament's job? Governor-General and Council, that's one part of the Parliament. That's the executive part of the Parliament. 68 says he is the head of the military. Well, how come ScoMo, the liar and the traitor, is telling the states they can have the military to do whatever they want? No, they can't, nor can he. He should just shut his mouth, crawl back in a box and belt up, because he's an idiot. He's a traitor. He's a fraud. And I don't care what he says. If he doesn't like that, too bad. He is. He breached the oath of allegiance he owes to us. He is. Now, he is a foreman of the federal parliament. Now, he has handed legislation from the Governor-General and Council. It's handed to him. He goes before the legislative authority, legislative council, or House of Representatives, at federal level, and they debate and go through the legislation put together by the Governor-General and Council, and they check it out and make sure it's worded correctly, or if it's got any faults in it, correct them. Then goes to the Senate. The Senate checks it out and decides, well, does it comply with the Constitution or not? If it does, he hands it back to the Governor-General, who signs it on behalf of the Queen. That's providing it doesn't have to be reserved for Her Majesty's signature, which some legislation does have. Now, therein raises a huge problem, because if he signs it as compliant with the Constitution, that binds the Crown to a law made pursuant to the Constitution. Everybody says we need an Australian head of state. Well, what the hell's the Governor-General? He's taken the Queen's authority and enforced the people's Constitution on a law. Why don't they look at that? No, they're too busy. We need a republic. No, we want a dictatorship, which is what they're asking for, and they're not getting it because they can't. The Constitution's indissoluble. Now, you go to the third part of the federal parliament. That's the judicature. We have at present, because our nice little Attorney General, when Cullerton fronted him, stated we have a committee which makes rules for the High Court. He just admitted to treason. It's what happened to the separation of powers between the legislative part of the Parliament and the judicature, which has a distinct line between it. Can't be crossed. When they started making rules for the High Court, they negated the High Court and they negated the legislative part of the Parliament. Why didn't the Governor get in and sack a lot of them? The Governor-General. Why hasn't he done his job? Does he have the power? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Why doesn't he enforce it? Because he's a spineless, lying flea bag who allowed Susan Kiefel to swear in the Parliament, knowing full well she was swearing the oath to the bush chook, or the Queen of Australia. What a pack of ning-nongs. Donkeys, what the hell's wrong with these people? They're traitors, they're liars, and they're frauds. If they weren't, they'd do the right thing. Now, let's go to your states. The governor of a state is the highest authority in the Parliament of a state, and he must be obeyed. It's in the letters patent for the office of the Governor of Western Australia, and every other state had one, a letters patent. Look up section 72 of our Constitution. It refers to it. It says, when the Governor-General shall select all judges for the High Court and the Federal Court, and they shall take the oath according to the Constitution. Then it says, but this section does not by necessity apply to the states, because each state has a letters patent which denotes the same action, or states the same action, denoted states the same action. So the governors of the states must select all judges. Doesn't happen. And they must swear the oath of allegiance. That doesn't happen either. There's bright sparks here in the Labor Party, but the Liberal Party backed them up in 2005, created the Oaths, Affidavits and Statutory Declarations Act, and repealed Schedule E to our state constitution, an act of treason. And we'll come back to that little issue. Now, the Schedule E is the Oath of Allegiance contained in our Constitution, which is what 72 is referring to. Now, 42 of the Constitution, before any member takes their position in the federal parliament, they must swear the oath contained in our Constitution. They decided they don't have to do that either. They swear an oath to the Queen of Australia, the bush turkey. Back there again, the old turkey. We would shoot it and eat it and do away with it. But anyway, I reckon the bush turkey is actually, or the Queen of Australia is Kim Beazley in a tutu. And that would probably fit the picture a little better. Anyway, let's go back to the parliaments of the state and the constitutions of the state. On the 29th of October 1900, Queen Victoria put every state constitution in place in its original form with a letters patent. Cemented it in, can't be removed. So what that means is at Federation, any modifications done prior to Federation were removed. They went back in their original form. You go back to Hansard 1890 to 1900 and it states, any semblance of executive or sovereignty belonging to the parliaments of the colonies ceased to exist at Federation. And so did the ability to change their constitutions. It's very clear. It's in Hansard. You can get it in the section of your state library, the archives. It's in Western Australia State Library, I know it is, and it's in Melbourne's because I've looked up both. I actually went to the one in New South Wales and I didn't get a chance to finish looking, but I did look at the letters patent for the Office of Governor in the state of New South Wales, and I gave it to Sue Mains at a lecture I did in Lura when she was lecturing there too. So she has it, or should have it. If she hasn't, she better go and find it again. People need to see it. Now, let's look at this COVID garbage, because that's all it is. The coronavirus, COVID, whether you like it or not. Whether they exist, go to what the parliaments have done. First, Clause 8 says when the colonies become states, the Boundaries Act no longer applies. However, when the Commonwealth is established, it is established as a self-governing colony of England, and the Boundaries Act applies. The only boundary in the Constitution is 12 nautical miles off the coast of Australia, all the way around. Not 200, 12 nautical miles. And that is the only lawful boundary except your property. When you buy a property, it's alienated from the Crown. Alienated means removed from. So, no, we don't own everything except the fact the Crown still owns it. That's a lie. That's a fraud. And it's theft, as is the Torrens titles. Absolute load of nonsense and a lie. So they don't. So they have a huge problem with what they've been doing. The only boundaries, as I state, are the boundaries around your property. And that's inside that boundary. They're bound under the provisions of Chalice Rule Property 3rd edition, which refers to fee simple. 1904, the High Court heard a case about, I think it was Sydney against the government in relation to land tax, and Sydney lost. They said the Commonwealth doesn't have to pay land tax. Who's the Commonwealth? We are. We are. We joined together in indissoluble federation, being the Commonwealth of Australia. So the Commonwealth doesn't have to pay land tax. We're the Commonwealth. We don't have to pay land tax. If that's wrong, then the High Court put it up wrong, but then it's not. It's correct. 1923, again, the High Court ruled what fee simple was. Alienated your land from the Crown. Every act of ownership except for the fact you cannot physically move it. Unless you had a pretty good bulldozer, it'd have to be a good one. But then, in Fijo versus the Northern Territory, HCA 58 in 1998, then Justice Kirby said he reiterated the decision in 1923 and said, no, they've got no rights inside your property. Not even the Queen can enter your property without a warrant issued under the Crown. Well, the ridiculous thing is they think they can just enter your property whenever they like. No, they can't. No one can. They need a warrant. Now, Plenty versus Dillon, the South Australian police thought they could enter the property on a summons for the guy's daughter or niece or whatever. And they end up cost them $300,000 to learn to shut your mouth and mind your own business and stay off their property. Now, if you read that decision, that's 1992, HCA 2, I think, or 5. I'm not sure of that because it's probably 20 years since I've looked at that. What it states quite clearly in 4, 5, 6, and 7, the method of getting a warrant. Well, I don't know if you've seen their local warrants now that they issue. They blank out the justice of the peace, they say. Now, you're entitled to see that warrant. You're entitled to have a copy of that warrant. You hold that warrant up to a light and you can see it's never been written on. There's no signature of the justice of the peace. I don't believe that one single cop in this whole country gets a warrant signed by a justice of the peace anymore. I believe they've got that blanked out and they just say, oh, we blanked it out because we're scared about what you'll do to the justice of the peace. What's wrong with you loonies? Do you think we just go around belting up justice of the peace? Yeah, right. Pack of girls. Of course you don't. And why would you take it out on them if you've done something stupid? But then again, you look at the justice of the peace and none of them are lawfully appointed anymore. They're not officers of the Crown. They're employees of the state governments, which should be parliaments and aren't, so they're treasonous anyway. And they hold no value in our system. They have a number attached to the companies known as the state governments. Well, where does the state government come from? Where's it saying here, talk about the state government? Doesn't. Talks about the state parliaments, because there's no government. The governments are set up under the Commonwealth of Australia Trading Company, Commonwealth of Australia Proprietary Limited, registered in US Securities Exchange Commission. The number is 0000805157. Under that sits Commonwealth of Australia Trading Company, LLC, registered in Delaware in the District of Columbia. Under that has 18 companies which own everything in this country, everything, all into these companies. When you buy a block of land, it goes, you're paying it off, but it's going to one of those companies to borrow money against. Don't believe me? Go into, contact me and I'll send you a copy of all the companies. I've got them all. And one of those companies owns the private air force known as the Royal Australian Air Force. How does that one work? We pay for all the planes and that, and it belongs to an American company. That is the cabal that Trump's knocking off at present, taking back all our things. On the 7th of January last year, I served papers on ScoMo and used Clause 61 of Magna Carta to seize the 3 lawful tiers of the federal government, because they weren't being used, or federal parliament. They weren't being used. So I seized them and hold them under the authority of the Crown for and on behalf of the people. So at this stage, the people control the parliaments. They own it. But they're not parliaments. They're operating in this country, the company is, as the Australian government. Separate from our constitution, separate from us. Now, if you go and have a look, I seized the green constitution. This piece of junk. I call it the mucus constitution because that's its value. It has the same value as mucus. None. Garbage. Rubbish. Now, the reason I seized that, because I hold it in a state of fraud until such time as the federal government proves in the House of Lords or the High Court of England or the Royal Court of Justice that that's a lawful document, lawfully put together, lawfully proclaimed, and lawfully accepted by the people as their constitution. Never happened, doesn't exist, pack of lies. Stop lying to the people. We've had a guts full of your garbage and your lies. Now, we go from there. I seized every act, statute, rule, regulation, law, whatever else they wanted to make up, put together or passed by the political parties and hold them in a state of fraud until such time as they prove their authority. And they can't. So they're sitting in a state of fraud. The Constitution, their rules, regulations, laws, acts, statutes, the whole lot. Then I seize all the assets of this country held in the companies, hold them under the Crown for and on behalf of the people. The issue is now, could I do that? Clause 39 of Magna Carta says it. Clause 61 says I can. Trial by jury, Clause 39. 61 says we can do whatever it takes to force the Parliament to do what it should be doing. That's what we're doing. Forcing them to face up to what they're doing. Now, I heard that Rod Cullerton has finally got a result from England. I don't know. It was going to be sent to me. I haven't got it yet. If it was, I would read it to you, but I can't because I don't have it. So we are going to do it. Do I have the authority to do what I'm doing? Yes, I have. I am a Commonwealth public officer. I was lawfully sworn in on the 6th of January 1975 into the Western Australian Police Force as an officer of the Crown. And as such, I have the right, but so does every person in this country has the right to exercise authority under Clause 61 of Magna Carta to seize anything or do whatever it takes to force the Parliament to abide by our Constitution. You can't kill them, you can't commit bodily harm on them, but you can sure take everything they got and destroy it as long as you don't hurt them. If you do it and they come after you, sure, you've got recourse to the High Court. So I wouldn't recommend you go out and start ripping up things and beating people up and taking all their clothes off them or wrecking their cars or burning their house or whatever. That's not being sensible. That is being stupid. Absolutely ridiculous. But what we need to do as a people in this country, we need to stand up. So therein lies the problem, because our only recourse is at voting time. Well, we've got an Australian Electoral Act. It's a load of garbage. Australian Electoral Commission, go and look it up. Trace it down, you'll find out it lives in a paddock in the middle of nowhere near Lakes Entrance in southeast Victoria. It's on there, it's registered with ANZAC. So how does that work? Why would it be like that? Because it's unlawful and they know it. Now, the method of selecting the Parliament, it starts at Section 7 of the Constitution, goes through to Section 23, and it explains it very, very clearly how elections are held. The governor of the state selects a pool of people, and under the provisions of Section 8, we vote for one person once, not dozens of them like in your preferential voting nonsense, because that's absolute garbage. How can you vote for one person but prefer another one? What are they, mentally ill or just sick in the head? Sick in the head. You're crazies. We vote for one person once. Now, do they have electoral boundaries? No. This is where they got a problem. When the Boundaries Act was removed from the colonies when they became states, the constitutions, the state constitution has electoral boundaries in Section 52, not the local government according to the bogus state constitution of Western Australia. And it is bogus. I'll deal with their constitutions in a minute. Now, can they have boundaries? No. So who do you vote for in the state? Where do you vote for? You get a group of people, not from political parties. They can put themselves up if they're accepted by the government and put into that group. We get to choose which one we vote for without all the lies about what we're going to give you and aren't, what we're going to do for you and aren't, how we're going to help you and aren't. We don't want to know about that garbage. We vote for one person once at in the state parliament. That's for the Legislative Assembly and one for the Legislative Council. At federal level, one for the Senate and one for the House of Representatives. No boundaries, no electoral boundaries. If so, show me in the Constitution where it says you can have. Doesn't. If you want electoral boundaries at a federal level, the federal parliament can be granted the legislative authority after a referendum. Go read it. Very, very clear. There's nothing ambiguous about it. It's nice and clear. Set it up correctly. It applies to the states the same level. Now let's look at the state constitutions. That's an interesting thing. 1964, I think it was, South Australia decided to take all the authority off the people, change their constitution, which is a letters patent, and give all the authority to the state parliament. That's treason. That constitution for South Australia was put in place with a letters patent. 6.1.9 of the statute of monopoly states very clearly, only the monarch can change the letters patent. Did she? No. Go to Queensland, 1929, they removed their upper house, changed their constitution. What happened there? Problem. It's unlawful. It's an act of treason. Not one single law or act or statute passed since then has any validity in law, as is South Australia's, has the same problem. Then you front up to Victoria, 1975. They removed your constitution in Victoria totally, binned it, and put in place a new one. Changed all the authority from the people to the parliament and disposed of the old one and kept the new one. So you've got 3 states. Then along comes good old WA. Our constitution was put in place with a letters patent just like everybody else's. The letters patent is clear and precise and must be complied with. Does it apply today? Yes. What happened at Federation? Well, good old John Forrest decided, well, I'm going to put the Constitution as changed prior to Federation. That change was removal of 32 sections under the authority of Queen Victoria. You pack of idiots. Was not. So what that amounts to is Western Australia was never lawfully constituted and still is not. Nothing they do is valid. Nothing. Why? Because it was a letters patent. We have a nice little specimen in Margaret River, which is a popular place here, who states he's in the Liberal Party, but it doesn't matter who he is. He's just misguided and bent and twisted. He stated, and he states continually, that when Queen Victoria died, so did the letters patents. Well, depends what you've been drinking the night before or what you've been smoking, because most certainly the letters patents stand. But if there's any doubt, you go to February 1920 into the Government Gazette and you'll find that King George V reiterated the fact that Queen Victoria's letters patents all stand and are enforceable. That was the King of England, King George V. 2008, Queen Elizabeth went before the federal parliament and stated, I uphold all of my great-grandmother's letters patents. Every one of them. So what stands? Every single one of them. Well, what happened to the constitutions of the state? They're all gone, changed, altered. So none of them are complying with the letters patent. What did the federal government do? She's going back to England. Who cares? We're not going to do what she says. Act of treason against the Crown. Definitely act of treason against the people. Now, 1979, each state, at that time we had the Labor Party in each state. It seems they keep coming up as the baddies, and they are. But the others are just as bad because they back them up and use what they do. So they're all complicit in their crimes, and they're all indictable offence. So they've got a huge problem with it. Now, they introduced the local government into every state constitution. That changed it. They tried to say we had residual powers. No, you didn't. You had no powers that transferred over from the colonies to the new states created under 107, 108 and 109 of our constitution. So that's a lie. No residual powers. There's no power to have a local government. If there was, why in 1974 did you ask us? We said no. 1977, you wanted us to approve the federal government paying local government. We said no, because that would have legitimised local government's existence by authorising their payment. 1988, we said no to the continuance, no to the establishment. It seems that idiots in Parliament haven't worked it out. Doesn't exist. Then along they come in 1999, a referendum for a republic. Again, we said no. No to what? Every government in this country. Australian Council of Commonwealth, whatever it is anyway, COAG, Commonwealth Organisation of Australian Governments. We said no. Goodbye, there's your fourth attack on local government. Shove it. We don't want it. Why have we still got it? Because we have parliaments pretending to be a government and telling us we're going to do what we're told like little school kids. Well, I haven't met a politician yet who knows what they're doing, except the fact they know they're committing treason and fraud and lying to the people continually lying to the people, trying to make out they got all this authority when they got nothing, goes back to the governors. Right. What happened? 1973, Gough Whitlam signed the Uni Treaty of Rome. What was that? That gave everything in this country to the Pope. Believe it or not? Look it up. You'll find out that's exactly what happened. Everything. Then he came back here and he created the Commonwealth as a corporation, and he passed over 300 new laws to control this country. One of them was a Royal Styles and Titles Act, which he couldn't produce, whether he liked it or not. He said the Statute of Westminster gave him that authority. He's a liar. Said the Constitution gave him that authority. He's a liar. How does a parliament or a prime minister of a parliament rise up above the source of their authority and sit on top of it and dictate over it? Only with treason, only with fraud, only with lies. So when he created this Royal Styles and Titles Act, he negated the governors of the states and the Governor-General. It went further than that, don't worry. Our nice little friend Bob Hawke decided that he had the right to issue a letters patent for the establishment of the office of Governor-General. What an idiot. Traitor, fraud, absolute little maggot. Disgusting, degenerate in every aspect. Now, go back to Whitlam. What effect did that have? They then created the Queen of Australia. They removed the Commonwealth to Australia. They created a separate government running parallel to ours and systematically took everything and sold it. Right across Australia, every state did that. Why did they do it? Because they wanted to own everything that we have and leave us with nothing. Then they thought, well, if we scare them enough and push them enough, they'll vote for Republic because we'll tell them we'll restore all their rights. What a pack of liars. Absolute liars. You know, you sit down and you look at all of them. ScoMo, the donkey before him, he's no better. I mean, he was the head of the Republican movement about 18, 20 years ago. And he was on a radio show saying that 60% of Australians wanted the Republic. I went on there and I got a DVD out of it anyway, because I said to him, where did you get that idea? He said, well, all the things we've done have shown that 60% of Australians want a republic. I said, well, I suggest you get out of the bush, stop asking the kangaroos, emus and wombats, because nobody else would ask for a republic, only idiots like you and them. And he hung up on me, but I got a DVD out of it and free meal at a local restaurant, so that was all right. It was well worth the chat with him. But the guy's an idiot. Where do they get these figures they quote? Like at present, most of the voters in Australia approve of Daniel Andrews. Where the hell are they? Back in the bush again? I didn't know there were so many wombats in Victoria. Where else would you get those figures? You got to be joking. Why would you vote for a traitor like that to lock you down against our Constitution, to establish what they've done to the people? Lock them in cages called their houses. How do you get off doing that? Where did you get the right to quarantine? You didn't. Why? Hang on, I've got something I want to read to you so that it's clear, because people don't like it unless they get it out of the Constitution. And you need to understand Section 49 of the Constitution. On a date or dates to be proclaimed by the Governor-General after the establishment of the Commonwealth, the following departments of service in each state shall become transferred to the Commonwealth. Posts, telegraphs and telephones, naval and military. Section 68 gives it under the direct control of the Governor-General. Lighthouses, lightships, beacons and buoys. And last of all, but not least, quarantine. So it's the issue with the federal parliament. When did the federal parliament pass laws in relation to quarantine? When did they say you can quarantine the states on borders that don't exist? Because your borders are boundaries. They can't exist. They are an imaginary line on a piece of paper that depicts one state from the other. The states are the people, just the same as the Commonwealth is the people. Ask a politician, no. The states are the parliaments and the government of the states. That's the states. No, it's not. In Western Australia, it's the Acts Amendment Repeals Court and Legal Practice Act. Section 8 creates the states as a corporate entity. They were told at the time, the traders, that was the Labor Party, and they reckon it came into law, it came into statute on the 1st of January 2004. It's a fraud, it's a lie, it's treason, just like everything else. Now, they removed that. It didn't have any effect on the Constitution, according to our Supreme Court. It didn't have any effect. They just spent hundreds of thousands of dollars changing the Crown to the state and the governor to the state and all the rest of the nonsense. But it didn't have any constitutional effect. Pack of liars. Anyway, let's go back to the authority of the states. When they added local government in 1979, in Western Australia, it was number 88 in 1979, the Act of Parliament. What they did is they negated every state constitution and knocked out every state. No more authority. No more governors of the states, even though they're only symbols. Knocked them all out. They don't exist. So now what law do we run on? Constitution, nothing else. If there is an authority in the Commonwealth Constitution, there's none in any state. Every state is negated in 1979 when they added another system of government to the state constitutions. They couldn't do it with a referendum. We only have the power of alteration in accordance with Western Australia with Section 73, but each state has its method of alteration. It would then have to go to the federal parliament under Section 128, to the people via the federal parliament, under 128, under legislation prepared by the Governor-General in Council. But he can't prepare it because it changes the state constitution. Have they tried to add it to the federal one? Yeah. Can they do it? No. No, they can't. It's an act of treason against the people. We said no to the continuance, no to the establishment. Does it apply at state level? Absolutely does. They say it's under federal law. Wouldn't matter if it's federal law or the Constitution. The state constitution only continues subject to the Commonwealth one. How do you say it's subject to when you add another system of government to it that isn't in the federal constitution? Doesn't exist, does it? So local government doesn't exist lawfully. It exists. It's the biggest blight on Australia. All under a Torrens title. Where did that come from? Governor Torrens from South Australia. A real criminal nutcase who decided he had the right to take away the rights of the people to the lawful ownership of their land and put it under a title which doesn't lawfully exist. Imperial law depicts ownership of land. Who can implement that imperial law? Go back to Hansard, 1898, and the preface to our Constitution. It states, and it actually brings up Western Australia. The Western Australian governor appointed Commissioner Cunningham to put together and sell land in this state. But the titles had to be signed off by the governor. Why? Because the land is sold from the Crown to the people, direct, through Chalice Real Property 3rd edition. Anything else is a lie. The current situation is a lie. And I'll come back to that one because you have to. Now, when we purchase our land, we purchase it from the Crown. Where does it transfer from? From us to the new owner, in fee simple, alienated from the Crown again. Nothing to do with the government, No stamp duty, no nothing. It's not the government's. Now, stamp duty, is it applicable? It would be if the document to transfer it was lawful, but it's not. It's not lawful. Can they collect stamp duty? No. No, they can't. It's all lies. If it was, it'd be under $30, and it would be a blanket duty on the stamping of a lawful document, which we don't need because the title transfers from one owner to the new owner, and the new owner is written on it. I've got a copy. This is not mine, it's a friend's. I keep mine away from here because they would like to steal it. Certificate of title. This is a lawful title. Just picks the land, has a seal, signed off by a lawful person. On the back, it says all the owners, when it was mortgaged and everything else. This is a lawful certificate of title, lawful one. You don't have them anymore. You have a glitch on a computer which they can rub out and change at their whim. Pack of lying thieves, that's all they are. Lying thieves, traitors, frauds. Now, we have a huge problem because we don't have any lawful state parliaments. So who are you going to vote for at the next election? I could go on and tie this channel up for hours, but I'm not going to. As you can hear, my voice is getting a bit hoarse and I'm getting hungry because it's dinner time here. Not like you, it's time to go to bed. But anyway, I hope I've added to a human store of knowledge. I know there isn't any politicians that could say anything to add to the human store of knowledge. And if I get my way, I'll hang a lot of them because that's what they deserve, just by hanging. Don't like that too bad. You don't get to change our constitution. You don't get to interfere with it. You don't get to operate in our parliaments without swearing a lawful oath. And if you're not sovereign and supreme, which you clearly are not by our constitution and by what was said in Hansard from the Australasian Council and the colonies who put the constitution together, it was never intended the parliament should rise up above the source of its authority being the constitution. It was never intended they took control of this country the way they have. They're just filthy, lying traitors. It has to stop. How does it stop? With you. With every single one of you out there doing your bit by standing up, going to your local politician and say, you're sacked, get out. You're not getting any more money off us. They say you can't do that. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. How are you going to do it? In numbers. File into the High Court, even though I know it's not lawful. The High Court must rule according to the Constitution. Otherwise, you have a right to go to the Privy Council. I got an idiot on emails telling me the right to go to the Privy Council has been removed by the Parliament. Well, that's funny. Queen Victoria's letters, patents and rules have all been upheld. Victoria 28 and 29 is one of her rules. She put our right to go to the Privy Council direct from courts of the state to the Privy Council. Does it exist still? Yes, in the High Court of England. Can we go there? Oh, yeah, absolutely can. Is it hard? No. Go online and download the papers and file them. Get together as a group, finance each other, and get it through their court and get it dealt with. These people are committing treason. Every single politician in this country is sitting in treason, acting in treason, and lying to you. Lying and stealing everything you got. It is time for all of you to wake up, stand up. I'm getting too old to do this. I hope you people are going to fill your heads with our Constitution, start to learn it, start to understand it, and start implementing it against your Parliament. They're not sovereign and supreme, so they have no power to sell any of our public utilities. They stole them and sold them. Stole them. If it's stolen, it never transfers to a new owner. It must come back to us. We never authorised them to sell anything. Therefore, they can't. Nothing. Nothing in this country can be sold to anybody without our permission. Did we give it? No. Bear in mind, everything that you've worked for all your lives, they've taken and put in companies in America. Time for you to take it back. Time for you to stand up. If you can't convince your local politician. Next time there's election, all go and stand. Go to the polling booths, ridicule them, tell everybody exactly what they are. And you sheeple out there who think they're all lovely little people doing a good job, get a couple of bricks and whack each side of your head. Wake up to the truth. If you don't do anything, your kids and you own nothing. Nothing. You worked all your life for nothing. You understand that? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Wayne. That was incredible. Greatly appreciate that. So yeah, so that's all you wanted to say, yeah?
Yep, for a while, yeah. I got a sore throat. You know.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Wayne. Really appreciate that. I know the people were loving that as well. I was just watching the comments. We had about 400 people the whole time. And just for where they can find you and follow you, like where can they go?
Just on Wayne Glew on Facebook.
Perfect. Awesome.
There's 148 posts on there written, which people didn't really like watching or reading, but that's okay. But there's a heap of videos since then. And if you ever, any of you out there find anything inconsistent in the Constitution with what I say, tell me, I'll look it up and I'll go back and I'll change it. Because the truth is what we're about, not assumptions. Okay, definitely. So if you find anything, I will correct it if I'm wrong. I'm not a pighead. I know what the truth is, and the truth must be put out there because it's our truth. It's our Constitution, our law.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Wayne. I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure everyone else does as well. I got so much out of this. I'm going to have to rewatch it just to get it all doubled up in my head. But yeah, really, really do appreciate you for being here, and hopefully we can speak again soon.
Not a problem.
Thanks, guys, for watching. Smash the hearts and share it around. We'll see you next time.
All right. See ya.